6 months ago, I approached Matt with a crazy idea that I'm sure many of you in the audience have to one of your friends. Matt's to start a podcast. When we started Connection Accepted, we honestly had no clue what we were doing. I barely knew how to communicate. I don't know how we were going to get guests. I don't know how we were going to record. I don't know what cameras to buy. I mean, there were so many unknowns in this process. We did not know what we were doing. Flash forward 6 months later, and that brings us to this episode at the end of February in 2026. We're going to take this episode to reflect on season one, which now doing this episode, we didn't even realize we had a season one, and tell you what's to come next in season two. Because now that we've taken 6 months to fail a bunch of times and really experiment with what we think is going to make a better podcast moving forward, we're going to tell you what we learned and also what to expect in this next season of Connection Accepted. So, Matt, do you want to start us off with some reflections you've had on the past 6 months?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it was just an idea 6 months ago. When you messaged me on LinkedIn saying, hey, we should try to start a podcast, I honestly thought you were a little bit crazy. And I've never had a podcast before. So even though I have a YouTube channel, podcasting is a totally different beast. And I think one thing that we've learned over time is that podcasting is a hobby disguised as a grind. But thankfully, we still enjoy it 6 months later, which is a great signal. But just thinking back to September and the early days, Danielle, we were really in such a scrappy founder mode mindset. I just remember not even knowing how we were going to interview our first guests, Marshall Sandman, Jason Alco. I had no idea how we were going to do this. And the interview was going to be in person. The week before that interview, you, me, and our at the time producer was like just we were literally winging it with the gear that we were supposed to buy, and we dropped probably way too much money on expensive camera and audio recording equipment. And I remember that first day, it was a Saturday. You took the train down in the early morning from Boston. We were meeting to interview Marshall Sandman, who's the managing partner of Animal Capital, super, super cool investment fund, partnering up with big creators. And we're just like rolling up to this dude's apartment in the meatpacking district, or no, it was in Soho in downtown New York, downtown Manhattan. We have no idea what to expect. I don't even know how to set up the equipment. I don't think I ever told you this, Daniel, but the night before that interview, I like stayed up late trying to figure out how to hook the cameras up and like the cable to the microphone, and then I had to set up the lighting. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, this is insane. I can't believe we're doing this. I don't know what I'm doing. All of my YouTube videos have been filmed on my iPhone. I've never used a professional Sony camera before. There are so many things that could go wrong. And then we go in the next day, roll up to Marshall's place. We don't even know where we're going to record. We end up picking a spot in the basement of the building. Thankfully, there was an empty room. And then we're like scrambling to set up the equipment while he's going upstairs to, I think, grab some water or something like that. And you and I are looking at each other thinking, all right, we better get our shit together here because we're about to do this. And somehow we pulled it off. And then immediately after that one, we had to go to Jason Alco's place in Midtown Manhattan and do the same thing over again and pretend like we'd done it over and over again. And I remember Jason and his team was watching this, like they were super impressed by the way that we rolled up with all the equipment and how we set everything up, and then had a full length interview with him. But the whole time it felt like we were just faking it until we make it, really. But fast forward to today, now we've done over 30 interviews with a crazy number of guests, and these guests have been so diverse. I mean, we've interviewed people like Eric Way, who runs a $100 million startup. We've interviewed people like Spencer Jones, the forward for the Denver Nuggets. We've interviewed people like Aswath Damodaran, world class NYU professor. I feel like podcasting has opened up this whole world of not only networking with really interesting individuals, but learning so many cool perspectives. And the awesome thing to me about being a podcaster or having a podcast is the knowledge aggregation, because we're the only ones that are having all these conversations with people that are at the top of their field in completely disparate areas. And we're seeing the patterns across how they look at content creation and how they think about their business and their career. And we're synthesizing all these insights together and obviously using it to create our own content and to think about our own business ideas. And I think that's something that I didn't expect to enjoy as much when I started the podcast, that now 6 months in, I really do appreciate, is having these interesting conversations with people on a pretty regular basis is super, super cool and really, really interesting. But I'll stop there, Daniel. Are there any highlight moments that you can think of from the last 6 months that you want to call out?
There are so many, Matt. When thinking back to that first Marshall Sandman interview, the reason I actually had to go up to his apartment was because he had to grab a spare laptop because we forgot to bring one. Because the way we were recording at that time is we would hook the Riverside up to 3 cameras, one laptop per camera, and the same thing at Jason's because we didn't even put that into the calculus that we were gonna have to do. So that was hilarious. Flying there and back to LA to interview Eric Way, that's also a moment I'll never forget. The amount of early trains I've taken to New York is not good for my sleep score. I'm glad I haven't worn a Whoop in a few months. And you're totally right about the knowledge aggregation. And I think that's what's we're really gonna change in season 2 because we've learned so much about LinkedIn and about social media from our previous guest because they've done it all. And one of the things we've learned is that it moves so fast. What works on LinkedIn and YouTube today didn't really work 3 months ago. Now, I think podcasting is a little bit different. That can be more evergreen content, meaning you could listen to a Andrew Huberman episode from 3 years ago and you can still get valuable insights. But even with that, the medical insights you get may be a little bit dated. And especially on social media where everything changes so fast, we want to make sure on this podcast we're trying to give you, the audience, as much value as possible and also learn ourselves because we're inherently curious people that we don't want to just touch stuff that's going to be valuable just 3 months from now. We want to dive deeper and learn things that are going to be valuable for the next 5, 10, 20 years that can help us all level up. Because sending a voice note in your DMs on LinkedIn to try to get a meeting with someone, that might work well for the next week. But if you learn how to communicate better in the DMs and how to write more effectively, that's something you can use the rest of your life. Are there any other reflections, Matt? Or I'll let you go, Matt, and just kind of riff on that communication part because that's something we've been talking about a lot and something that the audience may not have expected for us to start talking more about, especially when our initial focus was mainly on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think you touch on a really important point, Daniel. And it's important for us to share this with the audience, which is that as we have learned more and more about content creation and how different individuals approach their unique style of personal brand building, what we've realized is that everyone has a slightly different approach. Now, granted, there are universal principles that apply, but when you take a step back from all the details and the growth hacks and the little tactics, like, oh, do I send a voice note or not? Or, oh, do I like write my hook in this way or not? Or do I slap an image there or video? Like taking a step back from all of that, what we've realized through these 30 plus conversations with people who have a combined following of millions of followers on LinkedIn and other platforms is that at the end of the day, all of these people are great communicators. And specifically, they're really great at communicating their ideas and their thoughts through the medium of social media. So at the end of the day, content creation and being a good content creator, what does that actually mean? Bringing it back to first principles, you are still speaking to other humans. It doesn't matter if it's X or Threads or LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or Red Note in China. It does not matter. There is always going to be changes in the technology and changes in the platform, and the algorithm's going to constantly be getting tweaked like it is at LinkedIn, as we know very well. But the end recipient is always going to be another human. And so I think there's a really important takeaway that we've gathered and that I hope the audience can also understand, which is that being a good content creator actually means that you understand how to communicate effectively and how to convey an idea that you know your audience will care about to them in the most effective way possible on the platform or in the medium that they are going to be receiving it. So that's why for season 2 of Connection Accepted, we want to move beyond just talking about the tactics and the growth hacks of LinkedIn specifically, but we want to also touch on with our guests who happen to be really great communicators. I mean, these are people who are CEOs of large companies or very successful founders, professional athletes, and people who speak at press conferences, world class professors that have taught many, many, many hours of lectures. These people are all really, really great communicators. And that ability to communicate your ideas effectively, when you can do it through the internet, is why these people also happen to have such large personal brands and why people care about what they say online. And if you're someone who is ambitious and you want to build your personal brand or you want to build a business and you recognize that content is not just a nice to have, it's a need to have. It's an essential part of being relevant, staying relevant, having distribution for a product or service that you're going to build or sell. It is an essential part of it in 2026. Then you'll also get a lot of value from season 2 because we're going to be diving into the core skill that is at the center of what it means to be a great content creator, which is great communication. Daniel, do you have anything to add there, or did I cover most of that?
You covered it really well, Matt. The one other thing I want to add is that we understand that most of the audience is probably not going to post on LinkedIn. I mean, because that's the reality of content creation. What we've talked about so many times, the psychological barriers you have to face. And also, for some people, it's just not their thing. And that's totally okay. But everyone communicates. And when we're talking to these people who, and executives who've communicated so effectively with not just their employees, but also people on social media, that's a skill that anyone can learn. Because everyone is really posting on LinkedIn every day. When you post something in a group chat, trying to get your friends to respond or like to it, that's tough. When there's a long text in a group chat, no one's really reading all that. But there are ways to communicate more effectively to try to get all your friends to read that text in a group chat. And that's more the value that we're trying to get at for the audience. Because the same way when you write a hook on LinkedIn, there are ways to get more people to read that the same way with a text. If you make the first sentence more likely to people to click on your text and read the whole thing. So we really want to make sure in this season 2 that we're giving value to the audience regardless of if you want to post on LinkedIn or not. And also give value that will hopefully last the rest of your career and not just last what the latest update of whatever algorithm is. And I think one more thing beyond that is as we're broadening the scope of connection accepted, we want to emphasize that the algorithm is really just the audience. I think a lot of talk around social media these days is like, what's the latest algorithm update? Well, if you can communicate effectively and make something people want to read, it doesn't matter what the algorithm thinks because the algorithm is just your audience. If you're posting good content, then your audience is going to reward you because the algorithm at the end of the day wants to optimize for people staying as long on the platform as much as possible because that's how LinkedIn will get more ad revenue. Same with Meta. All these social platforms want you to stay on the platform longer. And if you're making content so good and you're communicating with an audience so effectively that if it's 11 p.m. at night and they're about to go to bed and they see your post, they're going to spend an extra 30 seconds reading it. And then they'll scroll to the next post and that one won't be as good as yours. And then they'll log off. So if your post is that good that people want to stay up reading at 11 o'clock at night for, that's worth it. Or if people want to read your email, that's what we want to get at in this next season too.
We are incredibly optimistic and incredibly excited about the future of this podcast and the momentum that we've already built over the last 6 months. I mean, just to do a quick rundown of the metrics with you, Daniel, since starting Connection Accepted 6 months ago, we have grown from 0 to 500 subscribers on the podcast. We have had over 1,500 watch hours, and we have had over 2,000 streams on Spotify alone. And this is only the beginning. The growth is always the slowest in the beginning. It's only exponential from here. And I'm super excited about season 2, not just because of this shift in the direction that we're taking the channel, but because I honestly believe that the quality and the caliber of the guests that we're going to have on and the insights that they're going to bring to the listeners and just the depth of the conversations that we're going to have is just going to be that much more impactful to people's careers, people's businesses, people's life in general. And we're only just getting started. Our best work is ahead of us. Our best interviews haven't even been published or recorded yet. So if you're on board with season 2 of Connection Accepted, drop a like. Also, please leave a comment if you have anything that you'd like to see in season 2. We're always taking feedback and suggestions. But otherwise, we'll catch you in the next one. Awesome. I think that's pretty solid.
The only thing we didn't add is, and we might not know this yet, but like the fact that our interviews before felt a little bit unplanned and unstructured. Like, I don't think it was clear to the audience what a Connection Accepted interview was. And what I mean by that is when I just think about the creators that I follow. And if I'm listening to a Colin and Samir episode, or if I'm listening to a How I Built This episode, or a David Senra episode, it's very clear the product that you're going to get. Guy Raz is always going to ask, do you think it was luck or not? And someone like Colin and Samir, they're always going to get into your story and also try to not just give like tacky social media tips. And you know what you're getting into when you're clicking that video. And I don't think we gave the audience of that enough in the first season. And I think this a little bit more of a focus on communication, not the whole episode, but trying to figure out our structure of how we want to do an interview is something that will also help us moving forward and give the audience something more reliable. Because one of the things we've learned from our social media, Matt, and also talking to all the guests, is that a format is key. It's key for your audience because it gives them an easier way to digest your content, and they also like the format. It's a proven way that they'll stay paying attention to the whole time. But also, like, it makes it easier for us, everyone. It just makes it easier. It's what makes you be able to do content long term is the format, and that's what everyone's striving for when they find it. So I don't know where I was going with this, but I think we've kind of found more of a format, especially doing a few of these pilot season 2 episodes already, and we're really excited to release them. I don't even know if this is gonna make the final edit
Yeah,
cut.
yeah. I think what you're trying to say here, Daniel, is look, season one was really a experimental and exploratory phase for us. Now, that's not to say that we didn't have a vision for what we wanted this podcast to look like, but again, it was a little bit of flying a plane while also building it and figuring out our own voice and our style and what we want this podcast to look like going forward. And now that we're 6 months in and 30 plus episodes recorded, we have a little bit of a better idea. And we think we owe it to you as the listener to have a better sense of what you can expect from future Connection Accepted episodes going forward. So, in future episodes, what you can expect is that the guests that we interview are going to not only be very well versed in the content creation game, but they're going to be great communicators who also happen to be doing very interesting things outside of the digital space. We're also going to structure our conversations so that we give you a better sense of how each guest followed their unique path to the point where they are today. And then also dive into what they believe good communication looks like and what they've learned about communication, how their perspective on communication has changed over time as they've either built their business or built their following. And then we'll also still touch on a little bit of content creation and probably still have a discussion around LinkedIn. But we want to structure the conversation in this way because, one, we believe that every guest has a very unique story that can only be told from their perspective. And that inherently is valuable for everyone. And two, we believe that, as we've said earlier, communication is a fundamental skill that will not only make you a better communicator in real life, but also improve your content creation ability and your ability to speak to an audience through any medium, regardless of what happens to the algorithm or how many new features they slap onto it. And finally, because LinkedIn has always been and will always be the platform that Daniel and I love and post on very actively, and that we know you as an audience are also very active on, we want to continue, obviously, having a element of LinkedIn in these conversations, even if it's not necessarily the core focus going forward. So that's what you can expect in the season 2 episodes is a really deep dive into the story and the unique perspectives of how these guests got to where they are today, their unique perspective on communication and key takeaways that you can take from it. And then finally, how that blends in with content creation and LinkedIn. If that sounds interesting, we look forward to seeing you in season 2. We've got a bunch of banger episodes coming out with great guests. So make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.